All right, you guys, welcome back. This is Morgan Zeggers, and I am really excited for this. I feel like I say that every time, but I am truly excited each time we do this, because today we have Dr. Peng. And not only did you live through the Cultural Revolution of Communist China, but now he is truly championing fixing the broken education system in this country. And not only that, but just helping people understand what's going on. I'm really passionate about this. I will not be sending my kids to public school. I say that all the time. I don't have kids. I'm not even married yet, but I can't wait to do that. And so I also know there's so many young people out there that see the problems, and we want to be a part of the change. And so we may not be married yet, we may not have kids yet, but we are actively looking into how we can help assist and how we can be a part of that change generationally. So a lot of people are excited about this interview, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Now, I couldn't do this justice, but I think it would really help everyone to hear your background and what you do right now. So if you could just give a kind of a list of your resume and what you do, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, yeah. Well, I grew up in China, and I was born in 1963, and then Cultural Revolution happened in 1966. So 10 years, 1966 to 1976. And the reason it's only last 10 years is because Mao died. Because before he died, he was keep saying that he will keep this going, this Cultural Revolution going. And I remember at that time, my mom was so worried about me, because at that time, when you graduate from high school, you have to go to the countryside. Colleges were not open yet. So I'm the youngest. Of course, my mom definitely worried about that. But so fortunately, he died in 1976. But I kind of just grew up during the Cultural Revolution, and I see what happened during that time as a student. And so that's actually one of the reasons when I heard about the diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. And that reminded me of the political officers during the Cultural Revolution. And also, when I started looking what's going on right now, I see the parallels between what happened in the Cultural Revolution and what's happening now. But anyway, both my parents were communists. They are really good people, and they really want to help people, but they did not realize that they helped build a totalitarian government.
Wow.
That's not what they wanted, but that's what ended up like that. I think that's kind of true for many other countries. Many early communists, they want to do good, but they all ends up with a totalitarian government.
Now, did your parents ever wake up to what was going on?
I don't know. I didn't talk to them that much, because they were busy working, and we were, sent to the daycare run by the factory where they work in, and so not much communication between our kids and our parents.
Interesting, because now, do you see a parallel in this demand for universal pre-K? Universal daycare for what's going on right now. So instead of having a family unit at home, they are saying both parents need to be at work, and we need to have the government provide care from a very, very young age. And a lot of people find that kind of sketchy.
Right. Those things sound good, right, at the beginning, because trying to help people, especially the working class people. But that was part of the plan of the communists.
Wow.
Is to basically control education. And what happened in China and happened in other communist countries, once the communists took over power, the first thing they did is to abolish private education. And all the education has to be run by the government. And that's how they can indoctrinate the kids.
See, hearing that, I have chills. And we're going to get into that of what's going on in America, but it's so similar now. They are trying to make it as hard as possible to not send your kid to the government school.
Yeah. After the Cultural Revolution, China actually was embraced the capitalist economy. We have a new leader come up, Deng Xiaoping. he wants to keep at least the economics is not socialism, but capitalism, because we had this since 1949 to 1976, almost 30 years of socialism, and it didn't work. The economy was almost going to collapse. So then actually kind of abandoned the socialism economy and switched to a capitalist economy, and also the college open. So I did my undergraduate in China, and then I won a scholarship to go to Canada for graduate study, and I went to Vancouver, Canada, which is west coast above Seattle.
Now, can I jump in here? Some people get confused because we hear stories of you're not allowed to leave, but then there's also students around the world that are from China. Are you sent with the expectation that you come back?
Right. I mean,
and you're supposed to bring that knowledge back home?
Exactly. That was the plan for the government. They sent us to the West to learn technologies, then to bring technologies back to China.
Wow.
But they did not realize that when these people went to the West, they got exposed to Western culture and Western values, and that was a cause problem.
So actually, that reminds me, we were interviewing Jennifer Zhang. Do you know her? She's wonderful, and she is also from China.
Okay.
And she was explaining that when she was a child and then a student, and even in college, they were telling them that the West had to be saved, that the poor people were destitute, and they were struggling, and they needed China's influence to help them. And it was really a sympathetic ask for them to go out and help the rest of the world. Were you also getting that messaging, and were you shocked to see the West is not doing so bad compared to China?
That was during the Cultural Revolution, definitely. Okay. Like I remember that. I mean, that pretty constant, message is that we are lucky. We live in China. We have Chairman Mao as our great father, great savior, and everywhere else is bad. I mean, America is bad. People go hungry. I mean, even though we will go hungry, but
you're starving, but you're told to feel bad for people that are starving more out there.
Yeah, we are trying to save, save the world in a way. But once the China opened up after Mao died, and that was a shock to all of us. Then we realized, we are the ones who are pretty poor.
Yeah.
Everybody else, especially Americans, they have their home, their cars, and all of that.
Now, maybe I'm just hearing, lies or something, but I saw something about how he said that he couldn't die, and so everybody was shocked when he actually died. Is that the case?
Well, he didn't say he couldn't die, but the message you got from the propaganda is that he will live a long life, right? So when he died, it was a shock to all of us. Yeah, it's kind of like, because he was kind of like God, right? And he was got elevated to so high that it's hard to even imagine that he would die.
Okay, and so your parents, they were communists. What were they thinking when he passed away? Did they start to question what they had been being told?
Again, really, I don't know much. I don't have much communication with my dad. But with my mom is more programmatic. And she say, things are turning good. Things have become better. Because during the Cultural Revolution, we had food scarcity, and that we have to be on a ration. Like, there's how much we can have. Like, our family actually are one of the lucky ones, because both my parents were communists. They fought, right, for the Communist Party. Even now, for my family, we only have like 1 pound of meat per person per month.
Wow.
Just 1
That's
pound.
not a lot.
No. Yeah, I remember when my son was young, he liked to, he eat a lot at that age. So he was ordering like quarter pounders and all that, right? Sometimes you get like double and triple quarter pounders. So that's almost the whole,
wow.
for me, for the whole month.
What other food were you eating in the ration?
In the ration, we get some rice, we have some corn, and everything is rationed, even like the cloth. Like at that time, you had to make your own, but there is so much you can have. And the oil, cooking oil, everything is rationed.
Okay.
Yeah, but after Mao died and then came up to power, he actually started to have private business. So he allowed the farmers to work on their own piece of land. I mean, it was never their own. Just like the government said, okay, you have that, then the government, everything is owned by the government in China. So even like you have a house, you only have the right to use it, but you don't have the land.
Yeah. Now, what do you think that says? Because in America today, we're hearing more and more about the left encouraging renting, not encouraging families, all this anti-religious rhetoric as well. And when you remove those things, which are the basic pillars of a society and sources of natural happiness, I mean, family, love, community, what does that do to the mind of an individual? And did you feel like that contributed to people feeling like there wasn't anything to fight for because they didn't have a home to defend, a family in that home, and their own property to stand for?
You definitely don't think in terms family. It's more kind of like you work for they call it the common good, right? You work for the country, you work for the party. Everything is about, we call that collectivism. I mean, I think nowadays we also have like community standard in social media, all that.
Right.
I mean, but the
it's
same
for the
vocabulary.
community, for the collective.
Now we all of a sudden become a community. You have fact checkers. You really don't know where it come from.
Yeah. Or just the fill in the blank for all.
Yeah.
That's the new American
thing. They always
thing.
say, okay, this is actually a typical communist trick, is that for the good of community, you have to give up something, right? Otherwise, you're bad people.
Yeah.
So when then actually encouraged, because before then in the Cultural Revolution, like the parents work in the commune, so they don't earn anything. They just like work for the commune, and so that way, because that they really don't have any motivation to work. There is actually a famous Russian joke, and it goes like that. In Russia, they pretend to pay us, and we pretend to work. But that's pretty much kind of same thing happening because now you are working not for you, you are working for some abstract, entity. Then you are not. Doesn't matter how hard you work, you are not getting anything better.
Yeah, and
so
in most cases, it's quite hard work as well, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, especially in the countryside. Yeah, but when then encourage the parents, the peasants, to work, to give them piece of land, so everything they can harvest from land belong to them. Now you have the incentive to do the hard work.
Wow.
And it just takes like about maybe 3 years, then the ration is gone. So the whole thing, like during the Cultural Revolution, all the rations, that just kind of man-made scarcity. But we are told that the government taking care of us, we have something, right? Guaranteed there is ration there.
Yeah.
But once people are allowed to to work for themselves, then we have abundance. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you're saying that it just took a few years?
Right.
They allowed people to finally own their own property and build on it?
It's not own property, but they own their work.
Work? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll
Right.
take that. that's
because
a
in
big
China,
step.
still,
Yeah.
everything, the land belongs to the government. Even though you have a multi-million-dollar house, you only have a right to use it for like 70 years. And after that, the government will take it back. You don't own the land.
Now, if, say you have this multi-million-dollar house on government property, how do the richer people in the country, the elites, feel about this? Do they have inner workings where they know that their property won't be taken because they're close with the big guys? Or do they have to just risk actually putting all of their life on this property and having it taken one day?
Well,
because I feel like there's this idea that, I mean, what do they think about their grandkids? Do they worry about preserving a future for them?
well, for them, they basically they will buy properties outside of China, like properties in Canada, property in the United States, or in Europe. So that way they have something.
Do they plan to escape one day?
Yeah, if they can.
That's what I hear, that it's a little hard for them to get out.
Right now it's hard.
Okay.
Yeah, right now it's hard. And also you never know. You're trying to, you have to, especially for rich people, they have to build a relationship with the politicians, right, with the officials. But you will never know. It's come down, kind of like a gambling, right? If you bet on the wrong people, then when that people lost power, then yeah, you probably could get confiscated and all that. I mean, that's in the past 3 or 4 years. That's what has been happening in China.
Wow.
You hear this movie star, and then the government decided just erase all the presence of.
Yeah, well, we hear these stories in America of somebody disappearing, and for us, it's hard to understand what's actually going on behind the scenes. But I mean, is it that they're getting rid of political opponents or dissenters that maybe have too much power that they worry about? And what do you think they do with them?
Actually, all of that.
Okay. Where do they go when they're disappeared? I mean, even like if you look at the COVID doctors and reporters, where are they going?
It depends, like for, we call the little people in China, like people has no power. they could get put in prison and may for like 10 years or may just die there. Nobody knows. Or sometimes you just disappear.
Yeah.
And you don't know where you are. So like as a family member, you don't even know where to talk, who to talk to, because nobody knows where that person is.
Yeah.
Just disappeared.
You don't get your one phone call, like in American jail.
No. It's just like, I actually have I know a person who actually was disappeared. His family don't know where he is. It's only about a year later they heard, okay, he was in this prison. Yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah, in China, you have no, you just don't know. You don't know what happened to you.
That's unfortunate. And now, when they get taken away, are they often returned, or is it for the most part you never see them again?
Really depends. Yeah, really depends. I would say in most cases you'll hear them back again, but for some you will never hear where they are.
Okay. Now we kind of skipped ahead a little bit with some topics. I want to go back to the Cultural Revolution. Mm-hmm. You said you went to college after this ended in Canada, but a lot of connections are seen lately between the rise of these very woke American leftists that feel so passionate about this ideology and this way of life that they will cancel anybody. And I always like to say it's not cancel culture, it's totalitarianism.
Right.
Let's be real here. Mm-hmm. It's not fake news, it's media propaganda.
Right.
That's another one. And then same thing with the curriculum. It's not DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion training, it's indoctrination.
Exactly.
So we need to stop using these fruity words in America as if this couldn't happen here, and we need to start calling it what it is.
Yes.
There's this strong connection in my mind between the radical Americans, especially on campuses that are just irate over some very strange issues, and what I see as the Red Army that rose up in support of Mao. And it's a little different because there's not like one leader in America
Right.
with the little red book that everybody reads and then becomes indoctrinated. But it is a way of thinking now that these young people are getting very wrapped up into. Do you see any connections between the danger of this ignorance turning from just kind of strange and sad to see to now dangerous?
Yeah. Well, if you look at what's happened, I mean, they don't have any particular, central figure like Mao, or they don't even have a kind of organization like the Communist Chinese Party.
Yeah.
Like here in America, it's more you hear from the professors mostly, I mean, in college level. And so sometimes you say, you just know what's going on there. But I am a Christian, so I look from that worldview. I mean, there is always, the good versus the evil, right? You have the Holy Spirit, then you have the evil spirit. And from what I can see, it was the influence of the evil spirit on those people, especially intellectuals.
Wow.
Communism actually started in intellectuals, right? Marx is really anti-Christian, but they use the Christian ethics to get the empathy, to get support.
What do you mean?
And I mean, the things said, okay, everybody should be equal, we take care of poor. I mean, that's all
I see.
Christian ethics.
Jesus is a socialist.
Right. And well, actually, the quote Jesus is a revolutionist, the revolutionary, right? Yeah, definitely.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Well, there is actually in the church, there's something called the liberation theology. I don't know if you heard about that. So basically, is that the gospel is to liberate people from poverty, from that. So it's not only emphasis on the social part of it, but that's the whole thing is about social justice. So that was in church.
Wow.
But that idea also influenced a lot of intellectuals, especially people, the professors. I'm rereading Frederick Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a very good one. I think that should be a required reading for for students, because we need to hear that message again.
I agree.
And he was very concerned that at that time, after the Second World War, that because during the war we need the government, right? Government pretty much runs everything. But now we have a peace. What do we do? And so there is a huge trend there is to keep going government control and to have the socialism. And he saw the danger. And he also saw that what socialism can lead to. Because he basically made a comparison between the Nazis and the communists, especially in former Soviet Union. And he basically said they are the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically what they're doing is socialism, and socialism that will enslave people. And so he was actually quite influential at that time, and he was accredited for basically stop the trend in a lot of Western world, like United States. We didn't go that route, but we did make it more kind of become more socialist than what used to be. But still, we didn't get to that full scale of socialism.
Yeah. Now, can you explain a little bit, because this is not something taught in history classes these days, what happened with, you mentioned a little bit, the colleges were shut down.
Right.
Once you graduate, you turn a certain age, you go to the countryside. What was going on there, and why did they do those things, and what did that lead to with the Red Army and basically the militant group that did the dirty work of Mao?
That's called the Red Guards. Okay. So basically, when they started the Cultural Revolution, and And before that, he was actually marginalized, and it's because of his bad economic policies.
Oh,
Yeah, he was
fantastic.
Yeah, he was trying to have the peasants to work in the commune and all that, and people not only work in the commune, and the parents actually eat in the commune cafeteria, and he wants to have socialism, communism. Yeah, he's actually quite a romantic in a way. He was thinking about this utopia and all that. He's not a practical person in terms of economy, but he's very good at power. How to manipulate people.
Oh, we learned that.
But in terms of economy, he's more kind of like a dreamer, and
that can be just even worse.
Right.
That can be very dangerous.
Yeah, he's not really practical, but his policy caused the widespread famine for 3 years. That was probably the worst famine in Chinese history. So after that, he was being marginalized. So they gave him an honorable position. You are the #1 guy, but you just rest, right? Let us do the work. And that was Deng and Liu Shaoqi at that time. Liu was the chairman, president, and Deng was actually running, kind of like premier. But Mao didn't like that. He wants to come back. He wants to get power. So when they started the Cultural Revolution, he basically used that. He encouraged it was started in college. It's just kind of like what happened in Nazis, like book burning and all that. All started in the college campuses. You have those young people. They have energy, and they don't know much, but they thought they know everything, kind of like the mindset, right? And so he kind of used that, and those Red Guard then went out throughout China to basically to encourage, the middle school student to high school, middle school student to come up to basically trying to. They called they're going to destroy like 4 odes.
Oh, yep.
The 4 odes, right? The old habits, old ideas, old custom, and
Tradition?
Old tradition, yeah. And so that they cause a lot of damage. But he was using that energy and to get rid of his political opponents. But once he used the Red Guards, and he still wants to come back to, you have to, if you want to rule, you have to keep some kind of order, right? But the Red Guards was kind of roaming in the country, trying to, doing a lot of damage. And also at that time, the Red Guards split into factions, and factions fighting with each other. And eventually they get into really use guns and
well, I heard that they were so indoctrinated that they ended up fighting each other and trying to hurt each other over accusing the other of not caring enough about one of the principles or violating a principle or not loving Chairman Mao enough. And it became something that even Mao couldn't control himself. And he created this monster. and it was a really good, I'll have to send you the audiobook link because I was listening to it and it made so much sense of it. He used it for his own personal desires and power, and then it became something that he just couldn't even control and caused even more chaos. And that happens quite a lot, doesn't it, when you create something like that? What were they doing? Were they killing people? Were they just trying to intimidate? I've also heard connections between like Antifa, the modern day Bolsheviks as I see them, the Black Lives Matter people that burn and loot and hurt people and beat business owners outside of their own businesses. I hear connections to the Red Guard as well.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
At first the Red Guard was actually, they ransacked people's houses, and also tortured teachers and professors. And at that time, their energy is towards outside, right? But once that phase passed, then there is a power struggle between different factions. So it's purely for power struggle, people on the top. But they always say, okay, the other side is really not the real red guards. They don't really, we are the most loyal, or we are red guards. So everybody is trying to prove that they are the
Interesting.
They are the real ones, right? Then they fight against each other. It's all just purely power struggle. But then when it's out of control, Mao actually sent armies to basically took over all the factories, schools, and all that. Basically, just stopped that, and he sent all of them into the countryside.
Wait, so he sent the Red Guard into the countryside, and then sent the armies into the factories,
right.
schools. Okay.
Yeah, basically to keep order, right?
Yeah. And now what's interesting is I'm looking over there. We're in the vault for the American Journey experience. It's amazing. I mean, there's artifacts all over. And they showed me, I don't know if you can see in the corner, there's 3 original copies of Mao's Little Red Book.
Oh, really?
And so, I mean, that's fascinating. And you hear the stories of any foreigners that came were handed these huge bags of it because he wanted them to take them across the country or across the world and spread the information. Before we move into what you do now, the problems that we're facing in the connection, do you have any stories of the Cultural Revolution in that sense? Because a lot of people lost their lives just for daring to commit wrongthink. There was concerns of kids being encouraged to report their parents. There wasn't that sense of family unit because you couldn't even trust your loved ones. Do you have any stories of that, or what was that like to live through?
My dad, at that time, he was an executive in a big factory, right? So, but when Cultural Revolution started, Mao used the Red Guards to basically turn the whole country upside down. And so my dad actually was imprisoned in a makeshift prison, like all the officials at that time. So because Mao didn't trust the party, the party apparatus, the whole thing. He wants to make sure who is loyal to him, who is not loyal. I mean, there's a big purge, basically. And so all those officials being put in prison. So my dad was put in prison, and my family got kicked out of our apartment, so we actually exiled to the countryside, and we have to live in Mao house for about 3 years. I was about like 5 at that time. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, to me, it's actually traumatic, right, experience from a nice apartment to
yeah,
to
especially at such an age like that.
Right,
I mean, those are your developmental years.
Right, exactly. And then the Red Guards were fighting each other, and we basically, at that time, we're still in an apartment. We had to hide under the tables because the bullets was flying. Yeah.
Just random shooting, or?
Actually, 2 factions, they are shooting each other. Yeah, so we just kind of, our apartment building is in the middle.
Yeah. And do you remember as a kid hearing your parents or neighbors talking? Would anybody dare to even have conversations about what was going on, or was it just known you don't do that?
Well, you don't talk about it. Yeah. Very careful not to say anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is fascinating because you go from this and then you're transplanted into the West.
All right.
Were you nervous about going? Did you think in your head that it was going to be a worse place than China when you got there and you were going to have to struggle for a few years in school? Or were you excited to go? What did you know about the West at the time?
At that time, because when I was in college, we got like books and magazines, right? So I have some idea what's happening outside.
Okay.
So when I went to Canada, I mean, definitely cultural shock, right? You see what happened in China and what happened in Canada. You have a lot of freedom in Canada. But at that time, that was in the 80s, so that's called the golden decade for the in China, is that everybody felt like there is hope. The country is getting better, and the economy is getting better, and also political side is the environment become a lot freer. And you're at least allowed to say things. You're allowed to criticize the government.
Okay.
So at that time, pretty much all of us who will study in the West, most of us wants to go back to China and to help build China.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you felt that opportunity there.
Right.
Now, did you have hopes for reforming the government? Were you like, okay, we're in a communist regime, but we're okay with that? We just want to fix it a little? Or were you hoping as intellectuals to reform the actual structure of government?
Right. I mean, it's basically when we saw what's in the West, right? Canada, United States, and Europe, and we saw democracy, right? That's a big thing. So we want to bring that back in China. We want to reform the political system.
Yeah. Fascinating, because that's why they don't let people learn this stuff, because they know that that's exactly what will happen.
Right.
That the people will want to try it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what stopped that? All of that? Because at that time there is hope. I mean, even inside the party, there is a faction who wants to make China more democratic, or at least make the party more democratic. But in 1989, that just changed everything. So what happened in Tiananmen Square, right? The students was asking, demanding democracy, which was promised. The Communist Party, before they took over power, they promised that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so did Castro, so did the rest of that. They always promise in a few years we will have a free election.
Right, yeah.
That never happened in Cuba either.
Never happened, yeah.
So where were you during Tiananmen Square?
I was in Canada at that time, so I was doing my Ph.D. Yeah, I was in a Ph.D. program, and so I was organizing, my wife and I were organizing people, the students in Vancouver at that time, to send, monies and send pens back to people on the square. And
wait, so you were with your wife? You guys did activism together?
Right.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
And is that how you met in Canada?
Well, no, actually we met in China when I was my senior years in college.
Okay.
So it's kind of different, kind of interesting to talk about her, because when we were married in 86, then she came to Vancouver to join me in 87. And as soon as she got to Vancouver, her thought is never go back to China.
Yeah.
So that was, to me, that was like, well, I still want to go back to China, right? There was something like that. So because she tasted the freedom, right? What happened? And she actually worked for a few years in China after graduation. So she actually saw more. I never worked at the time in China. So you see, there's different life, right? There's campus life and the real life.
Yeah.
And they're quite different. So 1989, and that was made clear that the Chinese Communist Party will never give up power. I mean, they will do anything to keep.
And so did you know anyone that maybe lost their life at Tiananmen Square massacre?
I don't know anyone who lost their life. I know one person, his legs was crushed by a tank, and another one had a bullet went through his leg.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's interesting, so I do a lot of campus speeches. I'm sure you've seen the environment on American college campuses these days. And there's this one situation. I'm a conservative woman that is patriotic and loves the Constitution. Very basic. I'm not too one way or the other, but I have core beliefs. And I went to speak on a campus, and the poor young woman that promoted the event, and she said that I was her idol. She was a student government senator. And the communists, self-identifying communists on the student government, decided to bring her up on charges for violating the student code of conduct, for inviting, get this, a white supremacist and Nazi Morgan Zeggers.
Yeah.
To the campus because she was against socialism, and that means all the usual,
Right.
lingo that they put out. And so I saw these tweets by these self-identifying communists, and one of them was making fun of the Tiananmen Square massacre, saying it's Western propaganda that it even happened. And to see someone say that so passionately and truly deep down believe it, it makes me so sad.
Right.
And so I know it's a hard topic to ask about and to talk about, but the more we share details of days like that, the more it makes it real.
Right.
The more it makes it very clear to those people in America that believe that it's the evil right wing of the country lying and spreading propaganda. It disputes that.
Well, in that case, he basically saying Dan Rather is a white supremacist, which is far away from. Yeah, he was there at that time, right? A lot of we call mainstream medias were there. I mean, they were they were broadcasting. I mean, if you want to go back, there is facts there.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, and it's just a shame it doesn't get properly passed down.
No, I mean, and which is kind of a way, if you look at history, in America, the kid, I mean, I guess at that time would be the baby boomers, right? When they go to school and all that, which is actually my generation, I'm kind of the tail end of it. In America, we were told about Nazis, what the horrendous thing the Nazis have done, right? The concentration camps and the killing the civilians and all that. But we never talk about what happened. I mean, what the Red Army did. What the Russian soldiers did. Yeah, there is actually. I mean, in China we talk about this called rape of Nanjing, right? I mean, the Japanese go in there and rape a lot of women. But when the Red Army took over Berlin, they raped about 1 million women and girls.
Really?
Yeah, Red Army. I mean, that's there. But we never talk about it because at the time we were still allies, right? And also in the American government and also in the academics, there's a lot of communists or communist sympathizers. So they never actually made that known. But if you go back, you'll see that.
Well,
what's happened.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about the lies of progress and social justice and women's empowerment that comes with socialism and communism. The first one, we were speaking with Jennifer, and she was explaining that the pitch to a lot of the peasants out in the countryside, they were used to go take over the landowner's property.
Right.
And they would say things, gruesome things of like, once you kill the landowner and take his land, then you can do whatever you want with the daughters and the wives. And so that's not exactly women's empowerment that you hear from the left these days. But there's also a book called Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism. And it's not a dirty book in any way, but the title is just graphic. And the author makes the whole case in the book that when we don't have to marry men for money, which we apparently have to do under capitalism, women can relax and enjoy the dating field more and marry men because they love them and want to be with them, not just because they need someone to take care of them. Instead, they have the government to take care of them with all the social programs.
Right.
So a disturbing concept, but the idea of replacing the family, I see it as. And then what's even worse is at the end of the book, there's a whole paragraph explaining. So yes, they might have said that this was about women's empowerment when they sent women to the workforce and the USSR had all these empowered women working and they had the 50-50 quotas and everything. But it was really more so just to increase the number of workers total, not to empower women in any way. They just needed more people in the factories. Right. And so even in the book having to admit that, why publish a book like that then? It's a shame, but it really just showed the hypocrisy, the frustration that I see in it is that you're actually hurting women in so many
definitely.
ways.
Yeah, this is what I saw. Well, they always have some cases to make a point, right? Which is a lot of times those cases are true. We call it under the old society, right? When Chinese Communist Party took over, that's the new China. There is old China. In the old China, definitely done, some girls being sold, right? Or the parents made a decision for the marriage and all that. Those are bad. But so in the new China, you don't have that. But now the government becomes a parent, right? Like when I was during the Cultural Revolution, basically, if you want to get married, you need the government permission. You have to get to a certain age. And once you married, you cannot have the kids right away because you need permission to have a kid. There is a quota, right? And of course, you can only have one.
Yeah.
But even you can have one, but when to have it, the government tells you need permission from the government. You
need permission to get pregnant from the government.
To have a kid.
Wow.
You could get pregnant, but you have to get abortion. Yeah.
Oh. So when you find out you're pregnant, you have to go to the government and ask if it's okay to keep your baby.
Well, better you ask before you do that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but if you have a baby, then you probably have to abort it.
Well, I think human nature has proven that unplanned pregnancies happen quite often.
Well, I know.
So can you explain that, the one-child policy? What did you experience with that? Were you around?
After the Chinese communism took over, the China went through like the Civil War, the World War II, and all that, right? Sino-Japanese War. So a lot of people, we need a population.
Yeah.
So the government basically encouraging you to have more kids. So they called hero moms. If you get like,
I'm gonna write that down.
The more the better, right? Like,
hero moms.
Hero moms. Like my mom was a hero mom because she had like 5 kids, of the youngest. But during the Cultural Revolution, because of bad economic policy, they said, okay, we have too many people, so each couple can only have one, and so that was the policy, one child, and that actually got lifted only about a few years ago.
Yeah, well, and that's where things get so sticky. I think American schools do a very bad job of making it clear to students that the China of the 20th century is the same one we're dealing with now. There have been some adjustments and changes, but don't let them fool you. And then it's policies like the one-child policy that really bring the past to the present and connect and show how recent all of this stuff really is. I mean, Tiananmen Square massacre, very recent, but then in our brains we're like, oh, that was the 80s.
Right.
And that makes me really sad for my generation that we can't connect the dots. I don't know if it was this rapid progression in technology that's kind of disconnected us from the past, where it's like, oh, those are the old days before phone. It's like there's this clear distinction. And so I worry about that assisting communist China with like, oh, no, we're the new China.
Right.
So why did they have the one-child policy? They couldn't afford to feed everybody. There wasn't enough food, and they needed to stop. Did they have forced abortions and sterilizations? We hear about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, especially in the countryside.
What would they do?
Like in the cities, people don't want to have that many kids anyway, right? So it's not a problem. But in the countryside, you need to have a son, right? So you keep have babies until you have a son, but you can only allow to have one. So either you get aborted, or you just let the girl die.
Or they would let the child die?
Yeah.
After being born?
Yeah.
If it was a girl?
Yeah. Because in the countryside,
You needed a man to help, to pass the property down, or to help maintain the property?
Just to work in the field.
Yeah, because you could only have one.
Yeah. And now we see a huge problem. Now China has way more men than women. Yeah.
Are they doing anything about that?
Well, it's now they opened up. They said we need more kids now, right? Because China has become like there's more people getting old, not enough young people.
Now, what do you know about the forced sterilizations?
Yeah, they definitely do that. They actually have in a way have an office. It's called it's kind of like family planning. Okay. Or Planned Parenthood, now it's called that. But it's kind of like planned birth, if you translate literally. So So they have this office there, and normally it's was women, right, as an officer, and she's going to make sure that people are not having more than one kid. If she knew someone was pregnant, if they already have one kid, then you will have abortion and you have forced sterilization. Yeah.
Forced?
Yeah.
Now, did you have situations of women hiding that they were
Oh, yeah,
pregnant
yeah.
and trying to
Yeah.
give birth to the
Yeah.
kid?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, in countryside, they do. They're just hiding and just running around. But sometimes, like even almost giving birth, if we get caught, then they will abort it.
Wow. Okay. So, as this is happening, what happens now that you're in Canada, and what made you decide to not try and reform China?
Well, just because the Tiananmen Square massacre, which kind of at least wake me up and say, okay, there is no hope. As long as the Communist Party is in power, they are not going to give up power. And which, if you look at the history, that's always the case. Whoever in the power do not willingly to give up power, right?
Yeah.
You only have some rare occasions like George Washington, right? He didn't want to run for another term. And he could become a king if he wanted. There was support there, right? But in most cases, yeah, whoever is in power just don't want to give up power.
No.
Yeah. So unless there is a economic collapse, or there's a revolution, or there's uprising, and that's always end up is violent, right? Which is different from what we have in the West, especially in America. Like every 4 years, actually every 2 years, we have some kind of revolution, right?
Yep.
But it's very peaceful. We just replace
by choice.
By choice. It's really a true democracy is to replace the officials, whatever, people in office. But this is in most other places is really the only way to end it, to change it, is through violence. Yeah. And we were hoping that China could have the change peacefully, but that hope basically died on that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how long were you in Canada, and when did you decide to come to America? What caused that change?
I stayed in Canada about 11 years. So after the Tiananmen Square massacre, and the Canadian government granted us the permanent residence, so we can just basically stay in Canada, don't have to go back home.
Did you have to file for refugee status or anything, or how did you make it happen?
You have file, but you file as a permanent resident.
Okay.
Because Canada at that time, even though we are literally we are political refugees, but the Canadian government didn't want to offset the Chinese government too much, so they just allow us to become permanent immigrants, right? As a country, you can do that. So that's how I then later on I become a citizen. So once I become Canadian citizen, I was able to go back home to visit my mom and all that.
Okay.
But Vancouver is very liberal. It's very kind of the West Coast, like California, and probably even more so. And also the media is really, at that time I didn't know much about media bias and all that, right? I just say the same thing, we have like 4 or 5 channels. You got ABC, CBS, you got PBS, right? They all pretty much give you the same idea. So you don't see what's really going on in America. But the reason I came to America is actually, I'm trying to, after I got my Ph.D., and it turns out actually it's harder to find a job in Canada. because Canada has a lot of government, regulations and all that. So if the company want to hire someone, if the applicant is a Ph.D., then they had to pay more, by government regulation. Mm-hmm. So as a business owner, what you do? You don't hire PhDs.
Yeah.
So that actually hurt us instead of helping us, right? So I can only work basically in universities.
Okay.
But I want to see the real world. I want to work. My degree is electrical engineering, so I want to really see that. I want to build, equipment or at least something, right? Something as an engineer. I don't want just like be a professor and just teach whatever. I want to do the real thing, and I got the opportunity in Indianapolis in 1995. So that's how I came to America. I think I remember this very clearly. My first culture shock when I got to Indiana, I saw a street named after Ronald Reagan. Because in Canada, over those 11 years, the media will tell you Ronald Reagan was a bad president.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Now looking back, we know why, right? Because those are very liberal left media. So of course, they will say bad things about Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
Yeah, there is no good word. I mean, so I had the impression that nobody liked Ronald Reagan in America. But once I got to America, the first thing
he's the most popular guy around.
Ooh, what's going on here? And that's kind of first time I realized the bias, not just the bias. Bias we can understand, right? It's selective reporting is the narrative. And when I was in Canada, I know the Chinese media, the propaganda's there. I knew that. But I didn't realize the West. You can think of that as a person who came from China, got to Canada, then we have the China is bad, then the West is good, right? So Western media is good. So that's kind of natural to think that. But once I come to America, then say, oh, something is not right. The media actually misled me, or maybe even lied to me into something else. And that's where I started to hear about the Republicans versus Democrats, because in the media, even though we hear a lot we have Canadian media, which is very left, and we have media from America, ABC and PBS and all that, and CBS, they're also left, right? So left are good people. They are caring about the people, poor people, and all that. That's a good thing, right? The right always working for the big companies. They just want to make more money. They are, they cut tax and are bad guys and all that. And so when I came to Indiana, I came to a very conservative state.
Yeah.
And later on, I actually lived in a very conservative county. And so that was saying, okay, the media actually, I'm not to me I can wake up to say, okay, what is really going on in America? What is the left? What is the right? What is liberal and what is conservative? Because liberal in China is a good word. Conservative is a bad word, right? The conservative in China is trying to maintain their one-party rule. They want to keep the status quo. The liberals wants to free from that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's classical liberalism. This is another sad thing about America. Classical liberalism is a beautiful American concept, and usually I try to explain to people it's basically the principles in the Bill of Rights. It's what our country was built on, and now you have conservative Americans that don't know what classical liberalism is, and so they look at that and they go, "I'm not a lib." And things get so divisive these days that we are so we've been led astray.
Right.
And so getting back to those basic definitions is really helpful for us. And it also helps with historical context.
Right, exactly.
For, wait, no, liberal's supposed to mean a good thing because it means what? Liberation from that oppression that most people experience.
Yeah,
we are liberated in America.
Well, that's something I think America is unique, right? It's the only country which is built on we call the classic liberalism.
Yeah.
Right. It's each person has an alien right from God, and the government is there to protect those rights.
Yes.
And we are treated as each individuals, and that's part of the classic liberalism. We are individuals, the individualism. But right now, individualism is under attack.
Yes.
And the left actually is pretty good at co-op the good terms.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, in the past they used to call them progressive, and that word become bad. Then they switched to liberal. And now liberal become bad, now they switch back to progressives.
Well, actually, in The Road to Serfdom, so when I first started the nonprofit and started trying to interview everyone from communist countries, The Road to Serfdom was one of the first books that I read. And what stuck out to me the most when I was just getting into it, just starting to try and understand the tactics of these people, it was the distortion of language. That he mentions. Yeah. And I mean, you can look at that as the simple things like progressive, democratic socialist, the usual social justice. Fidel Castro, I always love this, called himself a democratic humanitarian. So yeah, you could find a million examples of them not calling themselves communists or evil dictators, but that stuck out to me. And now in America, you see it, I mean, if you look at some of the definitions of words that have been changed these days, it's very strange and very concerning. My favorite is remember Justice Kavanaugh's hearings? Or no, Amy Coney Barrett.
Okay.
Do you remember Amy Coney Barrett was asked about the LGBTQ community, and she said a very basic thing of, you know, I won't judge someone for their sexual preference.
Right.
And it was very kind, very basic. Everybody said it before. President Joe Biden had said it before he was president. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had said it before. It was a normal term.
Okay.
And she said it, and what do you know? By noon that day, headlines were raging that she said the very offensive term sexual preference, because now it's no longer a preference. It's you're born that way. And it's very rude to insinuate that it is a preference or a choice. And so I kid you not, by the end of the day, so by noon, we got the articles. Yeah. It's a whole media story now because they couldn't find anything else to attack her for. She's an amazing woman. By the end of the day, Merriam-Webster dictionary had changed the definition.
Wow.
On the website to have an asterisk offensive term. Wow. Strange, right? Yeah. 24-hour spin.
Right.
But we see that so often now. That's just one of the many examples.
Right. And also, they like to use good terms, I mean the left, but that means the opposite, right? It's kind of like the 1984, you know, the Newspeak, right? I mean, peace is war, and you know, war is peace, whatever. I mean, it's just opposite, right? If you look at the so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is no diversity of thoughts, right? And if you think different from their thinking, you are not get included.
No inclusivity there.
No.
Oh, boy.
And the equity party, same thing, right? You talk about equity. I mean, those people get paid the big money, but they never thought of, you know, giving the money to the poor people.
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers in terms of that, in terms of helping, they're actually the least likely to give in charity and do that kind of service. Now,
their equity is compare them with millionaires and billionaires.
So you get to America. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, to see the spin in terms of what media was saying in Canada about American conservatives. What was it like, though, to get to America and now over the last few decades to see the direction that we're going?
Yeah, at that time it's 1995, and I thought, I became a Christian in 1994. I kind of spent, my wife and I spent like 5 years in a Bible study on the campus. So we actually go through the whole thing.
Together, that's really
Together, sweet. Yeah. And when she became a Christian first, so. Yeah. And I thought that Christians should vote that Democrat. I mean, how could any Christians vote Republican? I mean, right, that's what we heard in Canada. The Republicans just work for the rich and they don't care about the poor. I mean, that's everything against the Bible's teaching, right? But once I got to America, and I just surprised to know actually there were Christians who vote Republican, or maybe they're Christian, they're also Republicans. So that was a big culture shock to me.
Interesting.
So I have to understand what was going on to really understand the history of the politics in America history.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really definitely helped me. Fortunately, in America, even though we still have mainstream media, but at least you still have other alternative sources.
Now, so what would you say your thoughts are in the current state of the country now that you're here and you're able to look at all the examples that you've currently lived through, past and present?
Yeah, I was kind of worried in the past because things is going downhill, just getting worse and worse, right? And we are really at the 50-50 kind of thing politically. And if we keep the trajectory that we might end up with a socialist government. Well, in a way, right now we are trying to become, in a way, behave like socialist government, but we are going to that trajectory. So last year, and I saw something different. Last year I saw the parents waking up. They saw what happened in school.
Okay.
They don't like it. And they fought in local school boards, and they fought in the legislatures and all that. I see that I think that is a movement, and we see a lot of families decide homeschooling their kids, and that gave me the hope. I think the left has pushed too far. Now the pendulum is actually starting to swing back.
I love that. Now, that's the thing that I'm really excited to talk to you about now, because I'm hoping you can give us a little sum of what you do right now. Let us know what you're into. I mean, you do some amazing things at a multitude of levels. And then let's get into some solutions. I want people to leave this understanding that there's a lot that can be done. And it's not just a one-size-fits-all solution. There are so many different levels to this. That I see that as a positive thing, and that gives me a lot of hope for the situation.
Right.
So what are you up to these days?
Well, I have a YouTube channel which is called Taking Back Education, and that's where I interview parents and teachers to expose the harm the current education system is doing to the students. It's not just public; private schools have the same problem. So just kind of expose that, and also help parents to really take back their children's education. I mean, that's what parents' responsibility anyway. We just can't delegate it to the teachers because we've been told that they are the experts. But we know that the students are not really get much academic learning anyway. So parents really need to take in charge. And but I also, so that's what I do. And I also recently published a book. It's called Our Children Are Not Prepared. I started writing articles in 2016 is to say, okay, my concern, our academics bad. And actually, this is a long decline. I don't know if you remember, in the 1980s, there is a report called Nation at Risk. It was commissioned by I think it's by Congress, but anyway, this report gave a snapshot that basically called Nation at Risk. So they basically saying that if you look at what's happening in our state education, they are so bad that if this is done by any other country, we are going to declare war on them, because that's how things are done to our education, but we did on
Wow.
ourselves.
Okay.
So, and this is, but unfortunately, the solution is bad, even though the diagnosis is good. It's really, really bad. Really most talking about our math education, all those academic, and actually that thing actually, in a way, can cost later on, every administration has to come up with some kind of education policy, right? George W. Bush has no child left behind. Then Obama has reached to the top, this kind of thing. Every administration has to do something like that. It's really, I think, because of that. But anyway, but the solution is government. And that's where we know, and we know now. I mean, we have this many years record since the establishment of the education department at the federal level, just things going down, right? And it didn't go better. It's anything the government does. They always make promise, we'll fix this, but they had policies, and policies will never fix it. So anyway, so 2016, I started to write articles about something's wrong. The kids are not educated, kids are not prepared, and later on, last year, I heard about DI officer in the state of Indiana. We have this cheap DI officer, which she's paid more than the governor.
Yeah.
Highest paid state employee.
Wow.
And then we saw many schools hire the DI officers or directors, and they got paid about $90,000.
Whoa.
Yep.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. I mean, think about it as a teacher, right? The entry level teacher is about like $35K, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this $90K, well, she didn't talk about equity at all.
That's horrible.
Right. But anyway, that's happening all around. So I started to kind of dig into it and find that, okay, something is wrong. We actually, it's worse than I thought. It's not just academics. Academics definitely is bad. But if it's just academic, there's something we can do in the system.
Yeah.
But it's the communism. The communism has taken control the higher education, and now they are pushed down to the K through 12 educations.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many people that are just starting to wake up,
Right.
I would say, and they say, we've got to fix the colleges. And I'm like, oh boy, you have no idea how early it starts, do you?
Right.
So I'm glad you said that.
Well, so anyway, I just kind of put those, I wrote probably a dozen articles, so I kind of put them into a book. And right now I'm writing another book. It's called A Spectre is Haunting America.
Okay.
So this is actually from the Communist Manifesto. At that time, the first sentence of the Communist Manifesto is, a specter is haunting Europe, right? I mean, the communism. And no matter where it goes, always bring destructions. But right now, the specter is here. The ghost is here. And is really haunting this country because they have taken over the higher education. And now they are pushing down.
Yes.
There is one thing about the communism. The early communists, most of them, they're trying to do good. And they believe that. The communism is really like a religious cult. They have the religious zeal, like they are willing to die for it. The early communists. And a lot of actual professors they claim the Marxists, the communists, that could be nice professors, right? But they somehow bought into this ideology that in order for the greater good, in order to build a perfect society, we have to destroy our current society.
Yeah. And
that's why we see this huge destructive energies in America.
Now, I want to get your opinion on this because there's an infiltration in many ways. One of the aspects could be curriculum reform, and I'm more conservative, and so I don't believe in top down.
Right.
But I would love to see state and local community level reform in these things. And so that's one aspect. But there's also, I don't know if you've heard of the Democratic Socialists of America. It's a very strong group in this country now, and they have over 80,000 dues-paying members at this point. And so I've watched them over the years, and I remember when they got to 70,000, and then they...
Socialist?
Democratic Socialists of America.
Socialist of
It's
America.
the DSA.
Okay.
And we have congressional members who are affiliated with this group. The website says they plan to get rid of private business. They just don't have a plan for it yet in the long term.
No.
And so the short term, they said they're going to slowly raise taxes and regulation to slowly gain control of business, similar to Venezuela.
Right.
Now, on their website, they also have something about why socialists should become teachers. It's a whole program. And there's an essay written, and you can read it if you'd like. I encourage you to. But it was fascinating because it said, yes, one of the reasons is to make sure that we are able to pass down our values as teachers to the students and spread that information to them, which I think we all assume is the main reason. But it turns out their biggest reason for why socialists should be teachers is so that they can have the power that comes with being in a teachers union. And they said, as a member of a teachers union, they're the strongest political groups in this country. And if you're a member, you can influence not only education policy and education issues, but you can also have an impact with all other issues in the country.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I saw this come to play, we all did, with COVID, when teachers and teachers' unions across the country said they would not be going back to school. COVID related, but they said until we defund the police, until we see a new tax on the rich in our community, and just an endless list of non-education related policy. Is that also a big problem, this infiltration of the bureaucracy of education?
Yeah, so in the book, I will kind of basically talk about how do I come to the conclusion that the communists had taken over the higher education. So it started with from DEI officers, right? And that can remind me the political officers. So I said what they are doing. And from that, I will get into the book, Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be Anti-Racist. And so actually I wrote an article to give my response. But from there, if you dig deeper, you'll see that actually came from the influence, came from CRT, critical race theory. And the critical race theory started with critical theory, which is the Frankfurt School. And the Frank School was influenced by this guy called Antonio Gramsci, which is an Italian communist leader. So he's the father of cultural communism. So basically, at that time, the communist was trying to figure out what is wrong with Marxism, because Marx predicted that communism should start with, from the highly industrialized country, like the London or UK, America, but it didn't happen. It happened in Russia. So they came to the conclusion that Marx was wrong in that. We need to update that version, Marxism, 2.0 basically. So not just focused on the materials, not just focused on the, control the means of production. We need to control the means of cultural production. So it turns their attention to the culture. They want to control the culture. So that's called cultural Marxism. And so Antonio Gramsci, basically, he identified 5 social institutions that communism should infiltrate and take over. One is family. That's why you see that the communists everywhere, when they took power, or even before they took power, they're trying to destroy family. And then we have religion, and we have education, and also media, and the law.
Wow, they're doing very well.
Right. So this actually is a 100-year, they call long march through institutions. They are not just like overnight or overnight. it was whole 100 years. So you see a lot of communists went to education. And especially you look at in America, the 60s radicals, you know, the weather underground, those radical people like they bomb, right, terrorists. So all of those 60s radicals went to profession, but also we know that the Frankfurt School, when they had to leave German when the Nazi, Hitler came to power, but they went to Columbia University, and so that's where the influence started, that school, and they actually influenced a lot of professors. And Columbia University, their school education basically is the mother of all school educations. So they actually really in a very strategic point. And so that's how they worked. They go to education first, go to become a professor and educate the teachers, then use the teachers to educate the kids. That's how they can control. Really now they have control, but that's how they control it. When my wife, she's a teacher now, when my wife went to IU Bloomington, the school education, her professor told them that their job is to make social activists.
Really?
Yeah, just clear that, make social
Wow.
activists. Not about academics.
Jeez.
No.
And so what department was that?
School education.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow. Okay.
basically train the future teachers.
Great.
Yeah, that has been there.
This gets better as we go.
That has been there even for decades, right? That's how to prepare the ground. And now we see what happens. Mm-hmm. Now that we see, it's kind of like that's their fruit, right? We came up. So a lot of teachers, when they get into school education, they went through that indoctrination. It's always for the better good, the common good.
Yeah.
Or for the community. It's always like you need to take care of the, has to be equal, equality, equity,
yeah.
right? And now it actually is even worse. Actually, I heard this from my friend. She knew a mom. Okay, her daughter was about 12 years old, and her daughter wants to change her sex. And in the state of Indiana, once a kid is over 11, the school can make the decision.
Yep.
The school can send the kids to have hormone treatment, to have surgical treatment.
And to change the name and the pronouns.
Yeah, change the name and all that. And but without the parents' consent, but the parents still had to pay for all that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so the mom refused to use the new name, and that got reported to the government as a child abuse. So they took they took the kids away from the mom.
So this story of the mom having the government accuse her of child abuse and taking her child, this brings up an important topic that I'm really worried about moving forward, and it's the weaponization of the bureaucracy against parents if they don't comply.
Right.
We saw a hair salon owner opened her business 1 week early.
Right.
The businesses were going to open in a week, and she had to put food on the table. Her employees had to put food on the table. So they opened the business a week early. And CPS was sent to her house because she was endangering her child. And they had the town, I think, cut off utilities to the business. Because they found ways because there wasn't a proper law that she was breaking, and so they just instead found little bureaucratic ways to oppress her and to stop her, including CPS. We see liberal states, blue states these days, like California, that talk about wanting to force certain policies onto our kids in public school. Now, that's one thing if you can send your kid to public school, but also have an option to not do it.
Right.
But the problem, and I want your opinion on this, is the fact that these more liberal and leftist states are now making it impossible to get your kid out of public school, government school, and they're also forcing some crazy stuff onto the students in public school. So there's no choice, and now you're forced. And I'm worried that if the parents don't comply or if the parents start to try and stand up against this, they will now say you're abusing your child.
Right.
They will now
Yeah.
say you're not a responsible parent.
Yeah.
This is for the greater good of your child
Right.
and for the community.
Yeah.
Do you see this trend of them making it harder and harder to use to use private school, charter school, homeschool? And you mentioned it's similar to what China did.
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much well, first of all, I like the name of Young American Against Socialism, because socialism is the road to slavery. It's a road to serfdom, as Hayek made so clear.
Thank you.
So I don't know much about blue state, but at least right now in Indiana, it's still conservative, and even though government they can use government, but they still couldn't push too far. The people there, they will revolt against it, and that's actually our Americans' founding principles. One of the founding principles is that the government there is for our good, right? It's to protect us. If it doesn't do that, we have the right to not, if not overthrow it, at least we can cut off from it, right? That's how we become an independent country, is because the British government is not serving the Americans. And so I don't see that you will get worse in like red state. I think the pendulum still to the extreme now. It has to come back.
Okay.
And I've seen a lot of parents, I think especially homeschool parents, are running for school board.
Okay.
In the past, that's impossible. That's unthinkable. Like, how could you run school board? Your kids are not even in the school.
Yeah.
But,
I plan on doing it.
Right.
I'm going to homeschool, and I'm going to be involved in the school board.
Because people like you to see the danger, right? The government is use our taxpayers' money. We fund the school. Therefore, we have say to it, right? We don't want those people become so-called social justice warriors to cause the riots and destruction of, like Indiana is incredible. Like the downtown Indianapolis, there was a riot. There was destroying the properties, and the city government didn't do anything. They just let them do it. So all the businesses, they have to put the boarded up just for that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But now I think you see that a lot of parents will get involved in school boards and will get into the legislatures and all that. Because in Indiana, even though we are a conservative state, but a lot of things was not conservative at all. For example, the emergency order, it just only recently be lifted. And how could the government have the right to say someone's business is essential or not essential, right? And there is putting a lot of people in just financial hardship because the government said you cannot open a business. So that's just totally wrong. And especially in a conservative state, right?
So hopefully that pendulum is swinging back. Okay,
yeah, I do see that.
That makes me happy that you see
There's
this.
a lot of energy, especially of the parents.
Okay.
Yeah, and you talk about solutions. I think we, in a way to solve the whole thing, it's complicated, right? To solve the thing, we still have to go back to our one of our founding principles as a country is a free market. It's competition. You could send your kids to public school, private school. You can have, big school, small school, micro school, a home school. It's up to you, right? Up to the parents to choose. So, you just cannot say, okay, this is the right thing to do. Everybody has to do your way.
Yeah.
That's just against I think that's just against our, in a way I call that Americanism, right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Americanism.
Right. Really, this is a really special country, and I think in well, we know that it's the best country out there, right? The whole world, even though we have problems and all that. But our problems compared with other people's problems is really nothing. Yeah.
I agree. So let's close off. I would love, just given all of your experience, where you started in China, you went to Canada, you see what's going on in Canada now. So I'm sure that's interesting to see for you. But now with everything going on in America, I think it's fixable. And I think it's pretty much only fixable because we were blessed with this very special form of government. It's fragile, but it's very unique, and it helps us at least have a fighting chance compared to other countries.
Right.
And when you see the statistics, like 70% of young Americans would choose a socialist leader over a capitalist if they were given the option, and over 50% want socialism over capitalism. Most Americans don't know Nazi Germany didn't kill as many people as communist China did, because we just didn't learn this stuff in history class. What is your message to not only the young Americans that are favorable now to socialism, but what about to the Americans that are taking it a little for granted, what we have here, and are complacent and are not exactly caring either way? What's your message to these people out there?
Well, I think in a way we need to have at least the conversation to talk about what made us special, what is Americanism, what does it mean to have free market, what it means we have, alienable rights, and all that is, we have to come down to that this, just like the anthem, right, said this is a land of the free, the home of the brave. What that mean to have the freedom here?
Yeah.
Because here, like you said, most kids are just take it for granted. But in other countries, you don't have the rights to vote. In China, we still haven't, since the communists took over power, we still have never had a free election. And also have to realize, I think we really need to reread the classics, right? The Road Serfdom, the Federalist Papers, and also, the common sense. And especially we need to, to see the difference between the society and the government. The society, like Thomas Paine said, society is always good because that's people voluntarily get together, that we work for the good of that group of people, right? Not the whole big utopia community. It is community, but it's a real community for the good. That's always good, and we need to do that. We need to take care of the poor, and we need that. But we need to realize the government is a necessary evil. Because it is a necessary evil, we want to confine and constrain it. And that's our Constitution is, right? Our Constitution is basically put a string on our federal government. And so basically saying, this is what you can do. Anything beyond that, that's belong to the state. And in the state, have the state constitution, say this is much you can do. Anything beyond that belong to the people. And that's, I think, the only country we have that kind of governance. And also, I think I will say to the conservatives, I think we conservatives make the same mistake in we want the government to fix it. And I saw this, like when we have school fight and all that, right? We look to the legislatures to pass some laws to limit what teachers can do. And that is not right way of doing it. You still give more power to the government. So if we give more power to the government, maybe right now they will do something for you, but what happened to the next government, right? So we really have to, in a way, appreciate that your program is, really get people to talk about it, and then to realize, what makes us special is we have individual freedom, and we have the freedom and we have unalienable rights, and the government is there to serve us, just protect the right. Other than that, we are on our own. We don't want the government. Especially we don't want, education definitely, right? This is our home school. We don't want the government to be part of it. And also in Indiana, a lot of homeschool families, they don't want government money. It's because they don't
I hear about that a lot.
Yeah, once you have money, you may have
You're
string
inviting the
attached.
government into your
Right,
home if you're
right.
taking government money for
Yeah.
your homeschool.
Yeah.
And that allows them to control you.
Right.
I mean, that's why socialism is bad. And perhaps you have noticed this too, but conservatives always talk about why socialism is bad, and there's not a lot of options for products, and they talk about it in a very limited way. But
Right.
I see the biggest problem of it, and why it is leading us down a road to serfdom, is because it's about control.
Right.
Once the government provides all the required services and goods that you need to get by and to live, well, they can say, I'm not going to give those to you anymore unless
Right.
you comply with XYZ. And
Right.
that's how things get bad. It's the matter of control. So self-reliance and independence is so important, especially with economics,
Right.
especially in this country. And
Yeah.
I just really appreciate you sharing
Can
all of
I
your
just
stories.
have one
Of
more
course.
example? Well, I think it's a good example because like what happened when the COVID hit in China, the Chinese government, to made this app. Everybody has the app, so you have to use the app to go anywhere.
Wow.
There is red, or yellow, and green, right? So at the first, people say, okay, this is a good idea, right? So this way we know who's getting sick and we can control. But before you know it, they are using that for other purposes.
Like what?
Like if they don't want you to go anywhere, they just turn that red.
Oh,
Even though
wait, so
you-
if it turns red, your app, you can't go anywhere?
You cannot go anywhere, even though you never had COVID.
Is it connected to like your card, or how does it
Just
stop you
your
from
app.
going somewhere?
You have your app. You have to show that.
Oh, you have to show.
Yeah.
Oh, so if your app is red,
Yeah.
you're not going
You're not
anywhere.
going anywhere.
Wow.
I mean, that's just a good example to say maybe they can do that for good, but the same power, they can misuse it. And that's
Twisted?
right. That's the history tell us over and over.
Yeah.
Any power you give to a government for good, they will misuse for bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Peng,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. We appreciate it.
Well-
And good luck with everything. We will link to your YouTube channel, your book, podcast in the description, and we'll put it on the website as a resource.
Thank you so
'Cause we
much.
really want our website, when we develop this show out, to be a resource for everybody.
Right,
and
right,
hopefully
definitely.
people will see this stuff and then want to seek changes with education in this country. So
Right.
thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Hey guys, it's Morgan. Before we head out, I just want to say thank you for watching The Freedom Records, and thank you so much to American Journey Experience for letting us film here in Dallas, Texas at their vault. You guys, this place is filled with world and American history artifacts. It's fascinating to learn the details of the objects that are right behind us on set. So thank you to American Journey Experience for letting us film here, and actually, you guys can come here yourself. So go to the link in our bio to learn how you can do that and how you can get connected to this great place.